Tommy Jaggi of Fansided here with NFL expert Marcus Mosher. We're going to talk about the NFL schedule fallout. Now that this is all in the rear view, Marcus, we're going to break down the win totals of the projected teams in the AFC. And so I want to get your thoughts on that. I'll share my thoughts. Where are these win totals lining up right now? And would you bet the over under on these? We're going to first start with the AFC North. And we're going to go for each. We'll go division by division here. In each division, we'll start with the teams at the bottom. And so for the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns projected over under, Marcus, 4.5 wins. How do you feel about that line?
So first of all, I love looking at the win totals as we get into May, June, July, because these big sports books, and we're using DraftKings today for our odds, they don't build these big casinos for getting these wrong. It's usually pretty close to what the win totals end up being the following season. It can give us some good indicators of which teams have a really tough schedule, which ones maybe have a softer schedule, which we'll get to in a little bit. But it's one of my favorite exercises. So I kind of like to guess on what the lines are before we reveal it. Browns 4.5, and that makes sense. I thought this is probably a 5-ish win team. It's a really tough division. Uncertainty at quarterback. Obviously, no Deshaun Watson this year. Likely going to be playing a 40-year-old Joe Flacco or a rookie quarterback. Offensive line problems. The defense is going to be unbelievable. But until they find a competent quarterback, I have a hard time seeing them winning very many games. I mean, 5 is probably the ceiling here. I would be inclined to just pass on this one. That's a tough number.
Yeah, 4.5 seems so low considering the talent they have on their roster. Obviously, 2 years ago, they had the top defense in the league. The defensive talent is still there. You still got Myles Garrett there, but it's not hard to see why Vegas has this number where it is right now. They're in a tough division. I would expect them to come in last in the AFC North. And like you said, we just don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be like. How much do you trust Flacco? Is anybody else going to see the field? And if how are they going to perform? They've got one of the worst quarterback situations in the league right now. I think 4.5 is probably where I would have set it to. I would probably lean on maybe a little bit higher, maybe a 5 or 6 win season for the Browns this year. But I can't imagine it's going to be much higher than that. They still need to find their quarterback of the future.
And you look at their schedule to start the year. Bengals, actually, that's a pretty good draw. Bengals start the year always very slow. But Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions, Vikings, the first 5 games of the year, there's a good chance that they start out the season 1-4 or 0-5 just because of the quarterbacks they play. I still think this roster is good, but when you have arguably the worst quarterback situation in the AFC outside of maybe your team, it's going to be hard to win.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next one. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously I covered the Steelers full time. I think that anytime you would bet under, I can't go with that, Marcus, until we see it happen. This team hasn't had a losing record in 2 decades. And so I would go over the 8.5 win total here for the Steelers. But I do understand why the line is set where it is. Like, this team is going to have a new starting quarterback for the 5th season in a row. We just don't know how it's going to, we don't even know for sure if Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. And if he is, does it really make that big of a difference? Maybe he swings another game or 2. I think that even if you're looking at a season with Mason Rudolph, this team is going to have a competent enough defense. Their roster altogether. I mean, they don't turn the ball over still. Like, even when Kenny Pickett was the quarterback, when Rudolph was the quarterback in 2019, they play to not turn the ball over. And so they're going to be in most games they play. The Steelers have a tough schedule. I think it's ranked 10th among strength of schedule according to records from last season. So it's not an easy schedule. In the late slate, like week 11 on is pretty brutal. You play the Ravens twice, you play the Bills. So it's going to be tough. They could fall apart at the end like they did last year. But again, somehow they still manage. And so I would say slightly over that, but that's exactly where I would set the line.
I would go over for this reason. Their early season schedule is really soft. They play at the Jets, new starting quarterback. They're going to play home against the Seahawks at a 1 p.m. kickoff. Those teams coming from the West Coast to play an early East Coast game, they're always at a big disadvantage. At New England, then they're going to play Minnesota in Dublin. Come back, they play Cleveland. Minnesota's going to have basically a rookie quarterback Who knows if Jordan Addison's going to be suspended for that game or not? I think there's a good chance that Pittsburgh gets off to a 4-1 start and they build some positive momentum going into that, later part of the schedule. So I agree. Over 8.5, one of my favorite bets on the board.
Yeah, and I don't know where all this talk is coming from that Dan Orlovsky saying the Steelers are going to start 0-6. Like, that's not going to happen. And you look at the strength of schedule and some of the matchups, the favorable matchups they get, Seattle coming over from a West Coast game. Like, I do think that they're going to start off strong and they're going to have a chance to finish poorly again. It kind of like the same pattern, rinse and repeat that we saw from them last year. But when it's all said and done, I mean, pencil the Steelers in for 9-ish wins every season until we see it happen otherwise like that. We can just assume that's going to happen. And kind of the quarterback situation has been, regardless of the point, like it's just whoever's at the helm, it just seems like they finish in the same spot. It's like a time warp. You wind up in the same spot no matter what anyway. Second place team projected in the AFC North is the Cincinnati Bengals. To no surprise, Joe Burrow, elite offense. But boy, this defensive line and this front seven is looking really, really rough right now. Like how much, and we saw this last year, it's what kept Cincinnati out of the postseason ultimately was how bad their defense was. Does it take a step forward this year? Are they going to be a legit contender because they've got the offensive firepower too? They've got a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league to do that. But are they going to be better than a 9.5 win team? Are they going to be a team that falls short of the playoffs again?
Yes. Under 9.5 is one of my favorite bets this year for the Bengals because the defense has not gotten better. They've lost a significant amount of talent on that side of the ball. We still have the Trey Hendrickson contract situation. We'll see how that plays out. But new defensive coordinator, they're relying a lot on some guys like Dax Hill, who is coming off an injury. Their cornerback situation's rough. Logan Wilson coming off an injury. I expect this defense to be one of the worst in the league. Can the offense help maybe negate it a little bit? Sure, but they just play too many teams against quality opponents, and I don't see them matching up particularly well. So I like the Bengals under 9.5 here.
Yeah, and their first round pick was so interesting too. Shamar Stewart, you get one of the rawest players in the draft that had virtually no college production. And so how much is he going to make an impact right away? Is he going to work in a rotation, or is he just going to be a non-factor early in his career because he's so far away still in terms of pass rush moves and just the fundamentals of the game? So I kind of agree with you there. I think I would go under that. It just feels like this team defensively has a chance to be one of the worst defenses again this year. And so the offense still has so much to overcome. And it's unfortunate you're kind of wasting the best years of Joe Burrow here if that ends up being the case. But I would say slightly under that as well. And really those, the Bengals and Steelers, like if you had to predict, way too early prediction right now, who finishes second in this division?
I would pick the Bengals, but I think they're both going to be right around that 9-win mark. I just don't see the Bengals getting to double-digit wins. And if you're betting on the over here, you got to believe that they can get to 11, 12 wins. And I just don't see any path forward for that team the way it's currently constructed.
Yeah, nope, I agree. And then that brings us to the Ravens, which, to no surprise, the top team in terms of projected win total in the AFC North, 11.5 wins. They were a really good offense last year. Lamar Jackson had an elite MVP level season. The roster really only got better this year. They filled in some of the cracks with Malachi Starks. They got Mike Green in the second round, which if he can keep his head straight, that might be one of the best second round picks of the draft. How are you feeling about this Ravens roster? And would you bet the over on such a high projected win total already, or does the strength of schedule scare you a little bit?
No chance I'm taking the over here. Baltimore's schedule, especially to open up the year, is brutal. Listen to this stretch. At Buffalo, Sunday Night Football, home Cleveland, where they've historically struggled. They play the Lions, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Rams, the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings, all in a row. Now, they can win any of those games, but that is a gauntlet to start the season. I think Baltimore gets to 10, 11 wins, but no more than that. This is a really, really tough schedule for Baltimore. And I think they know, like, hey, the ultimate goal here isn't to win a bunch of games in the regular season. It's to make sure that they're healthy for the postseason. So I think they're going to be a really good team, but over an 11.5 just seems way too high.
Yeah, I would push back on that a little bit just because I'm not as confident that they're going to go under that. I think that Baltimore has a chance to be the best team in the AFC. And we know how important it is for teams to get that first round bye. I mean, Baltimore had that early playoff exit. They're looking to go farther into the tournament. Maybe they would have if Mark Andrews would have caught the 2-point conversion there against Buffalo.
It's just that road games at Buffalo, at Kansas City, at Green Bay. I mean, those are
it is tough. There's no question it's tough, and that those can come out either way. Like they're good enough to beat any team that they play. It's just how hard is John Harbaugh and the Ravens going to be pushing to get the first round bye this year? We'll see if they're in that discussion. I have a feeling they will be as one of those top 2 to 3 teams in the AFC again. But yeah, I would say 11.5 is probably what I would set. And I would be tempted to go over. I really would be, even with their strength of schedule. They have the 9th hardest schedule based on opponents from last year. They do have a really daunting stretch, like you mentioned there, but they're just good. I don't think they have many holes. Derrick Henry is coming back with vengeance here, and he's what was incredible last year. I mean, easily the second best running back in the league behind Saquon, and we just know how lethal Lamar is. Like he's the best regular season quarterback, bar none, in the league right now.
He is. I have some concerns with how brutal that schedule is, but we'll get to another team that has another 11.5 win projected total that I like to go way over that in a second.
All right, so let's move on to the next division now. Let's talk about the AFC East, and let's start at the bottom of the list here with the New York Jets in a very different makeup, front office, head coach, quarterback. Like this team's going to look different than they did. Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? They were very disappointing last year, and that came with all the in-season firings. Aaron Rodgers, despite having a respectable statistical season, still didn't do anything to raise the level of that team, and that's why they had the 4-13 record that they did. Their win total this year, Marcus, projected at 5.5, so that will be better already, a step in the right direction with Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields under center. Do you agree with the Jets' win total at 5.5?
Probably, but there is part of me that just thinks maybe this team in the post Aaron Rodgers era is just going to play way more free. And I think going from Robert Saleh and the interim coach last year to Aaron Glenn, having some stability, I do think that's going to help. And I think that defense was awful last year. Bringing in Aaron Glenn, who did so much with so little in Detroit, could help. But it's still Justin Fields at quarterback, who I have some major reservations about. The offensive line is young, and I think that's a good thing long-term, but I do wonder early in the season how much they're going to struggle. I think the Jets could get to 6 wins and be like one of these teams that's in every single game. But no, I don't think this is a team that's like threatening for the playoffs. So I would just stay away from that number altogether.
Yeah, I think I would too. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Glenn kind of just lets him do his thing, or if he tries to reel him back in like Mike Tomlin did last year. It didn't go so well. It was working out well in terms of the Steelers' success, and then Tomlin decided to bench Justin Fields. But he's obviously a very polarizing quarterback, very high variance quarterback when he's playing his style of football. But yeah, I think I would stay away from that. Well, I just don't trust it. For what it's worth, the Jets have the 26th hardest schedule in the NFL in terms of strength of schedule from last year. And so definitely will be some winnable games there for sure. It's just such a different makeup and dynamic of this team that it's hard to get a good feel for what they're going to be until we actually see them play in some September football, at least. That brings us, Marcus, to 2 teams tied for this. Let's go with the Miami Dolphins first, just to change it up a little bit. Dolphins 8.5 wins in the AFC East. That's their over/under. This team, and what happened to them? Like, it felt like a few years ago, it's like Mike McDaniel. He's that next guy. He's the next innovative offensive mind in the league. This offense is unstoppable. They're scoring well over 30 points a game. And now all of a sudden we look at this team and it's like they've got flaws everywhere. They've got roster holes. Their offense hasn't been as consistent. Tyreek Hill's old, and yeah, they've got some disgruntled players. Like, what do you feel? How do you feel about the Miami Dolphins right now? And would you bet the over/under on the 8.5?
So first of all, this team has been really good whenever Tua has played. Over the last couple of years, they're 17-11 when he's on the field. If you look at the last 3 years, I believe they are like 24-16. So again, they're very, very good when Tua's on the field. I don't worry about the offense so much. I worry about the defense. They've had a bunch of injuries between Jalen Phillips tearing his Achilles, Bradley Chubb coming off a torn ACL that he was never able to recover from. They're relying a lot on that front. They're hoping Chop Robinson can take a step forward. My issue with this team is the secondary. I think they have the worst secondary in the league right now. Storm Duck is one of their starting corners. Cater Kohu, Artie Burns is likely going to be a starter once they trade Jalen Ramsey. They just don't have the secondary to keep up in the division. And if Tua goes down for any stretch, they don't have the quarterback behind him that's good enough to enable them to stay afloat. I love the Dolphins under 8.5. I think they could easily be one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL this season.
Yeah, and it's wild because I was so high on McDaniel when I first saw that offense. I'm like, you got like this rapid RPO, you got quick slants, and your method basically was just get the fastest players, get the ball in their hands, and make plays, and they did that. But I agree with you. I think that there are so many just moving parts here and things that I don't like about this team right now that I think I would go under that as well for Miami, under 8.5 wins. Let's go to the New England Patriots, Marcus, which arguably the worst team in the league last year, at least right near the bottom. And now all of a sudden it's like, all right, you got Drake May, you gave yourself a left tackle and Will Campbell. We'll see how that works out. You've got a new head coach in there and Mike Vrabel, who is a good coach. Do you think it's going to make that big of a difference right away? Do you think 8.5 is a pretty significant jump from the dumpster fire team and the league's worst offense we saw last year?
Well, going from Gerard Mayo to Mike Vrabel is probably worth 4 wins in itself. So I do think that makes a big difference. You've got Drake May in year 2. They've spent a bunch of money on defense in free agency this offseason with Milton Williams, with Robert Spillane, with Carlton Davis. Like, they clearly needed an influx of talent on that side of the ball. I expect their defense to be awesome. I mean, they've got one of the best secondary rooms in the entire NFL. But the question is the offense. Does this offense take a step? I think getting Josh McDaniels to be your offensive coordinator is a step in the right direction. They went out and they signed Stephon Diggs coming off a torn ACL. We'll see how that works. They drafted Kyle Williams. They drafted Travion Henderson. I think the Patriots are going to be hovering around that 8-win range. They're favored in 11 of their 17 games this year, which tells us that Vegas thinks they're going to be right around that win total at least. I would have a hard time going over that number, but I think 8.5 is a very, very fair spot for them.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this is going to work out because, again, you've added talent, Will Campbell, Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, but it's still like, I mean, is Kyle Williams going to be your go-to target? Like Jalen Polk was legitimately bad last year. I just don't trust the passing offense still. And for May to make that second-year leap, like I kind of wish they would have done more in that regard, but I would go under this. I would go under, and I'd feel fairly good about it at this point in time, but you never know. Like we said, if May is that guy and he does have the second-year quarterback leap like we often see, then it wouldn't be hard to figure out how you can get there.
Vrabel's good at grinding out wins. And if May takes that step, and I like their weapons so much more than I did last year, because now at least you have a viable outside receiver in Diggs. They still have Pop Douglas. I think Kyle Williams can slot in as that number 3 receiver. It's just, can they be one of these teams that can get to 24 points? If they get to 24 points every game, they're going to probably win 9 or 10 games because the defense is that good. We'll see if McDaniels can get them there.
You think Diggs has anything left in the tank right now?
He looked really good last year before he got hurt, like really good. Like he was, I thought, going to be the difference from Houston being winning the division to potentially being a Super Bowl contender. But once he went down, that offense completely fell flat. So it's always hard when you get these receivers who are in their 30s coming off of torn ACLs, but I do think he can be a viable option.
It's different, and different is good in this case because it couldn't be worse for the Patriots offensively than what it was last year. So interesting to see that they have tied for the second win total in the AFC East. And the team that should run away with it, again, Marcus, is the Buffalo Bills, projected up here at 11.5 wins. I wouldn't go under that with a Josh Allen team that already played very well last season, despite the fact that their defense was horrendously bad. Like their defense has to improve. They're kind of mirrors of Cincinnati now in a lot of ways, where it's like, you're going to go as far as your defense allows you to go, even though you have one of the most valuable players in the league at the helm. Are you okay with the 11.5 win total for Buffalo?
Yeah, I would smash the over here. They've got 4
I
hard
would too.
games all season long. Home against the
Mhm.
Ravens to open up the season. They play home against Kansas City in November. They play at Houston, and then they play home against the Eagles. Let's say they lose all 4 of those games, right? They go 0-4. I think they're going to sweep the rest of their schedule because it is so soft. Like, obviously, they play the Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots a total of 6 times. Then they play the NFC South. So you're playing the Saints, the Falcons, the Bucks, the Panthers. The other division you're playing is the AFC North. And again, we're already factoring in that they're going to lose that Ravens game. They play Cleveland in Cleveland. That shouldn't be a problem at all. They play home against the Bengals. That shouldn't be a problem at all. I love this team to go over an 11.5 wins. I think 13 wins is very, very realistic for them.
100%. 13 was the number in my mind for Buffalo as well. And I think they could get there. I think they could be that top team in the AFC, especially considering their schedule, their division's not that tough right now. Yeah, I would hit that over as well. Let's move on to the AFC South, and we'll start at the bottom of the list again here with the Tennessee Titans, who have a new quarterback in Cam Ward. They've got a new head coach in Brian Callahan. They should be better than they were. Low bar. I mean, they were an atrociously bad team last year. I'm not as big of a believer in Cam Ward as you are, Marcus. So 5.5 still seems a little rich to me. I would still go under that. I think they're so far away as a football team still that I don't feel comfortable with that. What say you on this?
I think the offense is going to be much better than it was last year. I mean, just going from Will Levis to Cam Ward is going to be a major jump. They signed Dan Moore this offseason, which I know was the sticker shock on that move was great. Right? I understand. But that move has allowed them to move J.C. Latham back to right tackle. They've kind of filled out their offensive line. I just expect that unit to be better. Their defense needs a lot of work. And I would have to imagine next offseason is going to be the year where they focus their attention on that unit. But I think 5 wins is probably the number you're shooting for here. And if you're a Titans fan, winning games is important, yes. But all that matters is that Cam Ward continues to develop. That should be the measure of success for Tennessee this season.
Yeah, Marcus, and as a Steelers fan, I would have imagined that Dan Moore would be an $80 million offensive tackle in the NFL, watching him in 3.5 of his first 4 NFL seasons. Good luck with that. We'll see what they're getting there. Yeah, I can't get on board with the talent yet, so I would go under there, and I still think they're going to be a bottom 3 or 4 team in the league, but a quarterback can make all the difference in the world. When you're running with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, I mean, you're desperate. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be improvement there for sure. Jacksonville Jaguars at 7.5. Now, they made a lot of changes to the team, and just a couple of years ago, they had a super impressive playoff win over Justin Herbert and the Chargers, where they scored, 30 points in the second half of the game. They've been there. They've been in situations before. They've also been really bad. Like recently when Lawrence has been banged up and they've been forced to play Mac Jones and they score 10 points a game. Like, this team is all over the place. And they're in their defense. I hate what they did on defense last year, where they just were so vanilla. But how do you feel about them now that they have Travis Hunter and they got Bashaw too, and they've added a bunch of speed to that offense, and you've got Liam Cohen, who we both really like? Does that make them better than a 7.5 win team?
Yeah, I think they're a double-digit win team this year in the AFC. Mm-hmm. I'm so bullish on this team for a variety of reasons. You move on from Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson, 2 guys who were just a drag on this franchise, to James Gladstone, the youngest GM in the NFL, and Liam Cohen, one of the youngest head coaches in the NFL. I'm not saying they're going to have the same success Washington did last year, but you could tell from the moment Dan Quinn got to Washington that the vibes were just different, right? The energy was different. I thought Doug Peterson should never have made it to last season. The fact that he was able to coach all year was shocking to me. Getting Liam Cohen, getting a new direction, a new voice, adding someone like Travis Hunter on top of Brian Thomas Jr. I love this team. I would not be surprised at all if they finish first in the AFC South. Would not be surprised at all if they're a legitimate playoff contender in year 1 under Liam Cohen.
Yeah, this might be the easiest over-under for me to hit out of all of them so far. It's just the talent on the roster, what you've added, having a good head coach. I would go over as well. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they we're a 10-win team. And so, that division is wide open. And Houston, after taking that step back last year, I know that they were dealing with a lot of injuries. I do think that the division is up for grabs there. And I think that even if we say they split with the Texans, I mean, I think that they can run away with that division, I think. Let's talk about the Colts, another team that was kind of a disappointment here. 7.5 wins for them as well. And so they're tied there for second in that regard. I just don't know how things are going to go from here. Like, I was a big Shane Steichen fan during his time with Philadelphia. They always beat up on the Steelers. They just don't know how to defend that RPO at all. I had higher hopes for Anthony Richardson. Let me say that. And he's been doing everything possible to go underachieve all those expectations for as toolsy as he is. Like, is this Daniel Jones's team? Like, how do you see this turning out for the Colts this year?
I mean, I would be shocked if Daniel Jones isn't the starting quarterback by like week 8. I mean, he's just a better pocket passer. And frankly, I think he's a better fit with Shane Steichen. They're going to give Anthony Richardson every chance to fail in this offense. They're going to give him plenty of opportunities. But even if one of these quarterbacks turns out, I've got some major concerns about the roster. They lost multiple starters on the offensive line. Their right tackle, Brendan Smith, has been dealing with a lot. I think this offensive line is deteriorating a lot, and it has so over the last couple of years. The weapons are really good. They've got plenty of weapons to throw the ball to. I think the defense still has some big problems in their secondary. They signed Charvarius Ward, hoping he could be their number one corner, but I think this team is still a year away. They're still a quarterback away. And unfortunately, my concern would be if this is another 7 or 8 win season for the Colts, wouldn't be surprised if Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen are out of there next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And I think the only way this goes well, Marcus, is if Richardson, in his third year now, pulls it together and is able to have a really good season, be a fraction of the quarterback that we thought he was. If they go to Daniel Jones, it's over already, because you're still talking about your quarterback situation is annihilated. It's not going to be much different than it was when they had Flacco. And so I think that they're going to be pretty underwhelming team overall. 7.5. That's right where I would set it. So I don't know if I would touch that one personally, but all right. Houston Texans, 9.5 wins. Still the favorite, right? Would you have them? I mean, I know that Vegas has them 2 full wins higher than Jacksonville. Would you still call the Texans the favorite to win this division?
Yeah. Yeah, because their defense is absurd. Like, they're going to be able to win a bunch of these games 16-13 if they need to. They've got one of the best corners in the league in Derek Stingley. They've got one of the best young pass rushers in Willie Anderson. And they've done a great job of kind of filling in the rest of the gaps. They signed Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, or they traded for him this offseason. Kalen Bullock had a fantastic rookie year. Jalen Petrie is one of the best slot defenders in the league. That defense is going to be phenomenal. And honestly, I'll be surprised if they're not a top 3 unit. The offense needs a lot of work. They've moved on from the former offensive coordinator. Nick Caley is a new play caller there. They've reshuffled the offensive line. No Tank Dell for this season. That's going to be a work in progress. But the great thing is that the defense is going to be able to keep them in game. So I think they're going to get to 10, 11 wins again this season. But it's going to be a battle between them and Jacksonville for the top spot in that division.
Yeah, 2 years ago when we were watching CJ Stroud and offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, who I was optimistic about, it last year just looked like a totally different team. And I know that they dealt with a ton of injuries, but they were not very good offensively. And so I think that they take a step back in the right direction, even though I've got a lot of questions there as well. But like you said, yeah, the defense is really good. I would bet on that. The collection of what they have going for them, knowing that Stroud was a good quarterback and he will be still at this point. Yes, take them as a division winner. 9.5 wins. I think that's pretty fair. I would put them probably at 10 was the number I had in my mind. So maybe slightly over that. But I do think that it could end up being a toss-up between the Texans and the Jaguars for that division. I think the Jaguars will take a big leap. All right, let's go to the AFC West, and we'll start at the bottom with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Pete Carroll's Las Vegas Raiders. Again, another team that's going to look different this year. It's got Geno Smith, and so it's the Seattle Raiders in a way right now with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith at the helm over there. What do you think of the offense now compared to what it was before? And 6.5 wins, like this team still isn't very good, right?
I love the over here.
Okay.
Pete Carroll did not join this team to have a rebuilding year. You look at the quarterbacks that they've had over the last couple of years between Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ritter, Nick Mullins was in there, I believe, for a little bit. Like they've had an awful quarterback situation. And now you get Geno, who is going to give them some stability at the position. They draft Ashton Genty. So they've got Genty, they've got Bowers, they've got the weapons, they've improved their offensive line. I just think that Pete Carroll is a good coach. And the Raiders aren't going to make the playoffs, but could they be a team that wins 7 or 8 games? I think so. They do really well in their division. I don't see a world in which they go under 6 wins this season.
And it's a good point. I mean, Pete Carroll is a floor racer. We've seen that his whole career. It's kind of like Mike Tomlin. It's kind of like Sean Payton. We saw that in Denver. Yep. Like he's just one of those coaches who is going to raise the floor of your team. And so they will be better because of that. I don't think that they're going to be a good team, but I agree with you there. I mean, somebody has to lose games, but it's hard to bet against Pete Carroll just considering his history and how he always seems to get them there. I mean, even Geno Smith wasn't a good quarterback before that. And so, I would say I'd probably feel comfortable.
Geno's just, they won 4 games last year, but they lost so many at the end, including a dumb one in Kansas City that they absolutely should have won. Can Geno Smith be 3 wins better than Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ritter?
And their strength of schedule is they've got some tough divisional games. Obviously, it's 16th according to records from last year, so it's right in the middle of the pack.
But that includes 2 games against Kansas City, who were they 14-3 last year. So I mean, you remove those games and they play Kansas City really well. It's not hard to see them having a pretty good season with a softer schedule.
Yeah, I do think the coach is going to raise the floor there. Let's talk about let's hit the Broncos first. I want to do the Broncos. These 2 teams are tied here. But Broncos at 9.5 wins. They were, they a 10-win team last year, right? 10-win team. Mm-hmm. And Sean Payton obviously brought them a long way from where they were just before that when Russell Wilson is at the helm. Bo Nix looks like he's going to be something. I think he had one of his pass last year, longest air yard pass in like a decade in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I don't want to misquote that, but they've got something going on for them. Did they make enough improvements to their team this offseason to take another step, or are they going to stay right where they were before?
They remind me a lot of the Texans in the sense that like they're going to be able to win games by their defense alone. I mean, they've got the defensive player of the year in Patrick Surtain. They drafted Jahdae Barron to be the slot corner. Their pass rush is fantastic. I don't love what they've done with the receivers. They drafted Pat Bryant, who I kind of liked a lot, but as like a 4th, 5th round guy. They envision him being their version of Michael Thomas. We'll see. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. I just think with a much harder schedule this year, I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos regress by a win or 2, but they're actually a better team. I like this roster, but I'm actually going under here.
Yeah, I can see a regression from the Broncos this year. I just don't think they did enough offensively. And you said it, the defense is going to be good. I don't think there's any question about that at all. It's just, I don't believe in the offense, what we're seeing right now. I don't think they did enough there. And you're already in a crowded division with 2 teams that could very well be better. In fact, 2 teams that I expect will be better than you. And so already being the 3rd best team in your division puts you at a disadvantage there. Let me see that. In terms of their strength of schedule, they're tied for 12th hardest schedule in the league. So that doesn't make things any easier for them. I would go under the 9.5 as well, even though they were a surprisingly good team last year. That brings us to the LA Chargers, Jim Harbaugh's Chargers, who took a notable step forward last year, like we expected them to. Harbaugh is a good head coach. His track record speaks for itself at Michigan during his days with the 49ers. Like he just wins and his teams play tough. And so we're still waiting to see, like, is Justin Herbert ever going to take that next step? And obviously you need to get him help for him to do that. McConkey was fantastic last year. Do they have enough offensive firepower now. They've revamped their running back room. They got Omar and Hampton in there. That's going to help. That's going to help with their ground and pound philosophy, play great defense. I would go over the 9.5 here. What would you say?
I struggle with the Chargers because on paper, you like their roster. Even it's adding someone like Trey Harris to the second round just gives them another viable receiver that they can play on the outside. But I've got some concerns about the defense. They moved on from Joey Bosa. Khalil Mack is in his mid-30s now. The secondary outside of Derwin James, I think, has some major question marks. Asante Samuel has left this offseason. They relied on their defense to win them a lot of games early in the season as Justin Herbert was dealing with an injury. It's a really tough schedule. In the way that Jim Harbaugh likes to coach, he likes to play a physical brand of football, and that leads to a lot of injuries. And I just don't know if they have the depth to overcome it like they maybe did last year. So I think 9.5 is the right number. I think I could see them going 10-7. I could see them going 8-9. I don't think there's a lot of variance here, which means that you probably should just stay away.
Yeah, we talk about Pete Carroll being a floor raiser. That's what Jim Harbaugh is as well. But not only that, they've got a franchise quarterback there. And I think that's the difference potentially for the Chargers. We already saw them be very competitive last year. We saw their defense, without that many changes, take a big step forward just simply because of the head coach change. I think was a ton of it. And so I would go over on this. I feel pretty comfortable about them hitting the 10-win mark, maybe not going much further beyond that, but I would go the 10 wins. I think that they're definitely my favorite to be the number 2 team in the AFC West. And then, of course, Marcus, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who never seem to disappoint when it comes to the regular season performance, although we've seen them be average in this regard before. 11.5 wins for the Chiefs. They still have questions. I mean, they still have got to find a way to make their offense more explosive. They got to find a way to pass protect, which they're hoping happens now. They've addressed the offensive tackle position. Do you think that this team is worse off than they were a season ago?
Yes. The offensive line situation is significantly worse with Joe Thuney now in Chicago. They're going to be relying on Kingsley Suamatia to be their starting left guard. He was a healthy scratch for most of the season last year. They've got Jalen Moore, who they signed in free agency, likely going to be the starter at left tackle until Josh Simmons is healthy. Plus, they just play a really tough schedule. And I think when you saw that team in the postseason last year, they just looked exhausted and slow on both sides of the ball. Listen to their early season schedule. At Chargers, home Eagles, home Ravens. They play at Jacksonville, home Lions, home Raiders. That'll be a tough game. It always is. Home Commanders, at Bills, at Broncos. Like, it is just an unrelenting schedule for them. And they got very lucky to win as many games as they did last year. They were fantastic in one-score games. We know that you can't rely on that year over year. I think they're a double-digit win team, but it's more like 10-7, 11-6 than 14-3.
Yeah, this one's hard for me because I just have such a hard time betting against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Like, I think that Mahomes is going to be better than he was last year, just by default, from what we've seen in history from him before this. I would go over, but not much over. I think they're going to be a 12-win team is where the number that I had in my head for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's hard to bet on anybody else coming away with this division just because they seem to be so good at what they do. I think that they will be right in that ballpark somewhere and end up winning the AFC West there.
I have some major concerns about this offense
right
now and the way that it's constructed. The running game is non-existent. The running backs are Isaiah Pacheco, who looked as slow as ever last year. They're relying on Kareem Hunt again this year. Travis Kelce's another year older. I just don't know. And with Rashee Rice coming off a major injury, I just don't know what to expect from this offense. They just didn't look dynamic at all last year. And this offensive line continues to be a major problem at both tackle spots.
Yeah, for sure. And they have some major concerns there. Thuney was detrimental in a way down the stretch when he had to play tackle. That's just not his thing. But yeah, I don't expect their offense to improve by leaps and bounds. But it's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, I just think that they find a way to get it done. And so until I see that not be the case. I'm still going to bet on them being at least an 11-win team and probably over that for me. But if, that's a line that it would be a little bit risky to touch, I think, from where it's set right there. Anything else that we need to get to before we log off here today?
We usually see 2 or 3 new teams in the playoffs every single year. So last year, our wild card teams were we have the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Steelers. I would assume that at least 2 of those 3 are going to be gone. And I'm looking for teams like Jacksonville to potentially leap up. We'll see if Cincinnati can figure out their defense. Keep an eye on New England. Their schedule is so soft. And while they don't feel like a playoff contending team right now, things can happen and change really fast in the NFL. Look at the Broncos. Look at the Commanders from last year. Patriots are one of the teams that I'm watching early in the season. We should be able to tell pretty quickly whether this is going to be a playoff contender or not.
All right, we go live on this show at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Mondays. We will not be here next Monday for Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back the week after that. So thanks for watching the No Huddle show on Stacking the Box.